The spooky story I'm about to tell you today is, once again, about a house. This experience comes from a friend on my channel. He recounted his experience of buying a townhouse on the outskirts of Bangkok. He said he was just a man trying to find a small house to start building a home. But little did he know, the house he chose held an unexpectedly terrifying secret. Sounds intriguing, right? But before we dive in, as always, please give this video a like to show your support. If you're ready, let's get started. This email was sent by Garik, telling the story of him and his family. Garik shared that, at that time, his family consisted of 3 members, him, his wife New, and their 8-year-old son Phuc. Previously, they lived in an apartment in downtown Bangkok. As their family grew, he decided to look for a new home in the suburbs. He wanted a quieter and more spacious place. However, since his work still required him to commute to the city center, they tried to find a house near the train line for convenient transportation. After months of searching, one weekend, Garik and his family drove to a suburban area. As they were driving through a quiet neighborhood, they spotted a "for sale" sign in front of a house. The house was located on a peaceful side street, seemingly spacious enough for a family, conveniently situated near Phuc's school, a market, a supermarket, and the highway. Seeing this, they decided to stop and take a look. The house was a 2-story townhouse nestled between others in a row. To the right was an abandoned house, seemingly unoccupied. To the left was a normally inhabited house. In front of the house was a small yard overgrown with untrimmed weeds. The iron gate had begun to rust slightly. The house, painted white, had started to fade over time and sun exposure. But looking inside, they found the house quite clean and more spacious than they had imagined. The living room was connected to a modern kitchen. Garik said that, at first glance, he and his wife really liked the house. They decided to call the number on the sign. The owner was an elderly woman who said she needed to move in with her children and grandchildren in the countryside. So she wanted to sell the house quickly. Hearing that, Garik and his wife felt incredibly lucky to have found a beautiful house that met their needs, in a great location, and at an affordable price. Not long after, Garik decided to buy the house. He then renovated and remodeled it to their liking. Finally, the house was ready for them to move in. On the first day of moving in, Garik and his wife were excited about their new home. The 3 of them spent the day cleaning, arranging furniture, and decorating until they were exhausted. Everything seemed normal during the day. But as night fell, after everyone had freshened up, they all went to bed early. Tired from a long day of unpacking, all 3 quickly fell asleep. New suddenly woke up in the middle of the night. She heard strange noises coming from the house next door, the one she thought was empty. The sound was like someone's footsteps pacing back and forth in the bedroom of the adjacent house. At that moment, New tried to ignore it and told herself that it might be an animal or the wind. But the footsteps continued rhythmically and ended with a loud slam. New's heart skipped a beat when she heard that. She decided to wake Garik up and tell him everything. Garik tried to comfort his wife, saying there was nothing to worry about. It was probably nothing, and told her to go back to sleep. The next morning, after everyone had gone back to sleep, Garik woke up thirsty in the middle of the night and went down to the kitchen to get a drink. At that moment, he also heard a sound, like someone walking up the stairs, coming from inside the house next door. It was the sound of slow, steady footsteps. Curious, Garik decided to go to the front window and try to see into the house next door. But he saw nothing but darkness. Seeing nothing, he returned to the bedroom and tried to go back to sleep. But the footsteps grew louder, as if they were getting closer to his bedroom. New listened closely for a while, and then she said that as the footsteps approached, she felt something unusual happening in the bedroom. The air in the room became noticeably colder, as if something invisible was nearby. The footsteps suddenly changed because, at that moment, the sound was no longer coming from the house next door, but rather the sound of footsteps circling their bed. All they could do was lie still, their eyes wide with fear, scanning the room, and the image they saw made their blood run cold. because in the corner of the room, a dark figure stood in the shadows. The shadow had the shape of a woman, standing with her back to them. Garik, upon seeing this, immediately jumped out of bed. He rushed to turn on the light, and when the light came on, the shadow vanished, leaving only an empty space. Both were terrified, only able to look at each other and ask if what they had just seen was the same. And the answer clearly confirmed that they had both seen the same thing. And it had the same shape. But the horror didn't stop there. On the third night, Garik was startled awake again in the middle of the night. This time, he dreamed of a woman dressed in ancient Thai clothing standing at the foot of his bed. In the dream, it was this very bedroom. The woman said nothing, only stared at them with empty, angry eyes. After Garik woke up with a start, he realized that it was also the moment Nu woke up. Nu recounted that she had also had a nightmare. The strange thing was, Nu also dreamed of the exact same woman in Thai clothing, but the woman was standing in the small bedroom, the room they had initially intended to be their son's. The woman said in a cold and terrifying voice, "Get out of here before you have no day to return." Then, she woke up with a start. When their dreams coincided, it made him even more anxious and convinced that there was definitely something wrong with this house. The next night, the whole family went to bed as usual, but because of the terrifying events that had transpired in recent days, everyone went to bed with a sense of worry and unease, unsure if they would encounter anything scary that night. And just as they feared, the most terrifying thing was that they hadn't even fallen asleep yet. While lying in bed, there was suddenly a noise like someone walking up the stairs from downstairs. Garik confirmed that the sound he heard wasn't coming from the house next door as it usually did. But tonight it was coming from inside their own house. The sound slowly approached, each footstep on the stairs distinct and clear. Then, the sound stopped right outside their bedroom door, before a gentle knock echoed. Knock. Knock. Both felt a surge of fear. Nu was so scared that she started to cry, seeing his wife terrified beyond endurance. Garik decided to get out of bed and open the door to see. But all he saw was darkness and emptiness. At that moment, the air in the room suddenly turned cold, and what happened next terrified them both beyond control, because suddenly, the woman in Thai clothing from before walked through the wall from the house next door, stood in the corner of the room, and stared straight at them with angry eyes. She slowly opened her mouth and said in a cold voice, "This is not your place. Get out." Having said that, the woman slowly vanished before their eyes. They were both terrified, so scared that they couldn't sleep anymore. All they could do was turn on all the lights in the room and sit on the bed until morning. The horrifying event that night made them both decide to ask their neighbors if anything scary had ever happened in this house and recount what they had experienced. But the answer they received sent chills down Garik and Nu's spines. The neighbor said that the house they had bought was a normal house. Nothing special, but the house they should be afraid of was the one next door. Apparently, the house next to theirs used to belong to a shaman. It was a place where many people came to seek blessings and perform spiritual rituals. But then, the shaman passed away, the house was abandoned, and no one dared to live there. The locals believed that the shaman's spirit still resided in that house, and she wouldn't allow anyone to disturb her. After hearing the whole story, Garik and Nu immediately made a decision. They couldn't continue living in this house. They hurriedly returned home, packed their belongings, and moved out immediately. They decided to rent a new house in a different area and tried to forget what had happened in that house. But the memories of those terrifying nights and the encounter with the woman in Thai clothing still haunted their dreams. Eventually, that house became abandoned again. The "for sale" sign was put up, but no one was interested in buying or renting it anymore. The people living in the area began to spread spooky stories about the two houses. The story of the shaman and what happened to Garik and Nu's family spread far and wide. Some people claimed to have seen the figure of the woman in Thai clothing standing at the windows of both houses. Others claimed to hear footsteps and whispers at night, but no one dared to enter to investigate. Everyone believed that if anyone entered either of those houses, they might encounter a curse they were unaware of. The story of the two houses continues to be told among the locals, becoming a legend passed down through generations. No one knows how long it will take for these scary stories to fade away. Or perhaps they will exist forever. And that's the entire story I wanted to share with you today. Thank you so much for your email. Garik, what do you guys think? After hearing this story, what are your thoughts? Personally, I think this story wasn't about the house that Garik and his family bought, but rather the house next door. That house used to belong to a shaman, so maybe the shaman spirit was moving between the two houses. I don't know why they would do that, but if I were in Garik and New's shoes, just the thought of it would give me a headache, wouldn't it? It's already hard enough to save up to buy a house, and then to encounter something like this after buying it. What would you do with this house if it were you? Let me know in the comments below. If any of you have scary or creepy experiences, whether they're your own stories or ones you've heard from others, and you'd like me to share them, please send your stories to the email address below. And before we say goodbye, as always, please like, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell to support my small channel. Thank you for watching and listening until now. See you in the next video. Goodbye. Subscribe to the channel to watch Rain Sounds 24 hours videos every day.